Hello, everyone, and welcome into the hospitality room. I'm Blair Cartwright. Pleased to be joined today by Mike Irwin, the Dean of Arkansas Sportscasters. Mike, still getting it done. Great to have you in the hospitality room. Welcome, sir.
Good to be here, Blair. Great to see you.
Good to see you as well. Nobody knows more about the Arkansas football program, I think, than Mike. He's been covering college football for a long time, so we want to tap into that and hear some insights and also great stories. So we'll go right to our topics. Coaching searches. Well, this is the year everybody's getting axed. Are you surprised we're seeing so much turmoil in college football this year?
No, I think it's only going to get worse. I think NIL creates this, it makes it worse. Um, and then if you've got a situation like we have at Arkansas where you don't have a strong support for an AD, or you can go back to when Chad Morris was hired, when you didn't even have a sitting AD, you had an interim AD. I think it makes the search more chaotic. It's harder for us in the media to follow that because your normal sources sometimes don't work when you've got a situation like that. And I think this happens at a lot of different places. I think this thing at Penn State is just nuts. I
Yeah.
mean, these guys, I'm not sure what they're going to do. I mean, they just fired a guy that won almost 70% of his games, but because he couldn't beat Ohio State and Michigan, okay, get out of here. All right, who wants that job now? I guess they
Mhm.
got a lot of money because they're paying him a lot to leave, and they're apparently going to pay the next guy a lot of money. And that's the other part of it is if you think that players are going to accept more money. Why? And coaches, the salaries and the buyouts and all this stuff is just going nutsville. So I don't know. I don't like the direction of any of this, but it is what it is.
It is crazy, no doubt about it. And there's not a deep pool of candidates this year, and everybody's making changes. Do you recall, you've covered this a long time, do you recall a year like this where there's probably going to be a quarter of the Power Four jobs open, but there's not a list of great candidates to match that?
No, and that could affect Arkansas. I've been told all along they have four people they're looking at. And obviously, one of them is Petrino. That would be the easiest way to do this if he meets certain criteria. Nobody knows exactly what that is, but that would be the easiest thing. But they also like Rhett Lashley. They also like Summerall. They also like uh, the guy at UNLV. My
Mullen,
brain
Dan
Dan
Mullen.
Mullen. And so those are the four. I think a few days ago I was told that they're confident they can get one of those four. Now, to be honest with you, it looks like it might be down between Petrino and Mullen when the year ends. Now you got James Franklin in this thing, and that's could be strange. I mean, he's got going to have a ton of options. Some people have already predicted that Vegas says he's Arkansas's choice. He's the number one guy. That's nonsense. I've been told this guy's smart enough. He knows he's got options. So who
Hmm.
knows where this is headed?
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, you mentioned Arkansas. We'll just go ahead and jump into the Arkansas search. Is there alignment? Because the comments from the AD in Little Rock about how the program's not set up to compete for a national championship, suddenly now they're going to come up with a plan. It just seems like there's a lot of, I don't know, is there enough alignment there and a plan to make it an attractive job?
Here's the problem you have when the AD is not making the choice on its own. If you
Okay.
have a strong AD, at any given time when there's a coaching change, if you talk boosters, if you talk board of trustees members, they're going to be all over the map. You can go on the internet and look at fans. There's all kinds of people. Everybody different people want. Well, these people are no different. I mean, I want this guy. No, I want that guy. So there's always going to be that. But if you have a strong AD, at some point he steps in and says, "Look, this has to be the guy. This is it. This is what we have to do." And they'll go along with it. Well, you don't have that right now. So who's going to make the final decision here? We don't know exactly who's involved. I know there's some boosters involved. I know there's some board members involved. I think the chancellor is going to be involved, but somebody is going to have to pull this all together at the final when it gets down to the nitty gritty and say, look, you may not like this guy, you may like this guy over here, but we're going to do this. And so it's always complicated when you don't have a strong AD that's in position that says, hey, I understand all this, but here's who we hire and here's the reason why.
Yeah, that's one of the things I think that Arkansas was spoiled with Coach Broyles because he could get everybody on the same page. And
That's right.
since he's gone, there doesn't seem to be anybody capable of that, and it seems like the faction between the different monies is making it even harder for Arkansas to get on the same page.
Yeah, it's worse because of NIL, because not only are you going to hire somebody, but then you're going to have to go back to some people that didn't want whoever that is and say, well,
Mm-hmm.
but we still need your NIL money. And they may go, wait a minute, you didn't hire my guy. Why should I give you NIL money? So again, whoever's behind the scenes, I don't think Yurachek is doing this. I think there's got
Mm-hmm.
to, maybe it's Chancellor Robinson. Somebody's got to step in the end and convince a lot of these people that didn't get the guy they wanted to say, hey, we still need your money. And it may turn out, look, I'll just cut to the chase here.
Okay.
With the people that they're looking at, that they say they want, and Franklin now is in the mix, but
Mm-hmm.
you got people. I saw a story somebody wrote because I had mentioned I don't know if they can get him, and this guy came back and said Mike Irwin apparently is wrong about this because the Vegas has put him number one in odds of ending up at Arkansas. I'm just telling you that's nonsense. He's got options. It's going to be a while before he decides. So there are two guys out there that would take this job without any conditions whatsoever. You hire me, I'm coming.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is Bobby Petrino, right? And the other's
Yeah.
Dan Mullen.
Right.
Mullen has basically told them, hey, you don't have to give me NIL guarantees. You don't have to give me a bunch of money. I'll deal with the buyout I have here. Um, I want to come. Now, we hear all this talk about losing one possession games.
Mm-hmm.
This year, Vegas is 6-0, and five of them have been one-run games, one possession games, including the game they just won, in which he did a tremendous clock management thing at the end and came down. And it's the opposite of what we've been seeing with Arkansas. So
Yeah.
if you're looking at people behind the scenes looking at this and saying, wait a minute, this is the opposite of what we've been having, maybe he becomes more attractive to them.
Yeah, and it also seems like with other jobs presumed to come open, that changes the whole equation too. As we've seen multiple times in job searches, Mullen's name probably will get linked with Penn State, depending on how far down their list they go. Uh, Florida's going to open. That's going to change everything. And then, I mean, I don't know that LSU may not open if Brian Kelly can't get going. So it's
Auburn could
interesting.
open.
Yeah, I mean Auburn could open, and that changes everything, does it not? Because you think you've got these four, and then these other jobs open. That can affect the search as well, right?
Well, again, what I'm told is Mullen wants to come here. So he's
Okay.
not affected by any of that unless you don't offer him. And then he might go,
Mm-hmm.
but he might stay where he's at and just wait for some other. I don't know. I don't think he wants to go back to Florida. He's already been
No.
there.
Yeah.
I don't know how he'd feel about Auburn, but supposedly he's reached out. I don't know if he did it personally or through his agent, but he's told him, look, I want this job. You don't even have to get rid of the AD. A lot of
Oh
these other
wow.
people are saying, I'm not coming here unless you get a new AD because he can't raise money, you know. And he
Yeah.
hasn't said that. He hasn't asked about NIL money. He hasn't placed any conditions on accepting this job. He said, I want this job because I'm good. It's a perfect situation for me. I can come in, I can recruit, I can build a team up, I can win games. He's got a great reputation of developing quarterbacks. I can
Mm-hmm.
develop quarterbacks. I'll get the right people, in the other assistant coaching jobs, and I can do this. You hire me, I'll win at Arkansas because I did it at Mississippi State and I did it at Florida.
Yeah.
And
He's
he did it
won,
at
no
Florida
doubt.
at a time. Yeah, he did it at Florida at a time when they'd been down for a while. They'd had two or three coaches that had just tanked, and he came in there and immediately got them winning again.
Oh, no question about it. You look at his record. I mean, what he did in Starkville. Remember, they were the first team to be ranked number one in the college football playoff rankings. So
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
it's it's amazing. So you don't think any of the other openings yet to come will affect the Arkansas search necessarily?
I don't think it will affect those two candidates, Petrino and Mullen. I think I've been told that Lashley, and this has never been confirmed,
Hmm.
but I've got some pretty good sources that say that he has told Arkansas, look, I'd love to come to Arkansas. It's my alma mater. I want to do it someday. I'm not ready right now. I'm just in my first job as a head coach. I'm learning. I'm in a good situation. They're backing me up with plenty of money. My wife and I are happy. Our kids happy here. We like where we are. We're going to stay here for a while and build this thing up. And then at someday, when it's good, the quote I was given by somebody that claims they know what's happening is he said, I want to come back to Arkansas to help them win, not have pitchforks thrown at me. And you go, if Rhett Lashley has sat there, and we know he has, we know he was there at Auburn when all this stuff was going. He was at Auburn, when Gus almost got the job, and when Bielema was fired. He's watched all these coaches. Of Chad Morris last less than 2 years. He's seen what happens to coaches here, and I'm sure he's looking at that going, wait a minute, it's too unstable right now, and I'm not far enough in my career.
Well,
So
that
there's
and
that.
yeah, and he was in the playoff last year. I mean, he's got an easier path to the playoff, which is ultimately where you want to go anyway. Where he's at.
Where he's at. Somebody was asking me, what would you do right now if you were one of these coaches that were looking to, you'd gotten fired, where do you go next? Somebody like a James Franklin, I said,
Hmm.
I'm going to shock you. I would go to Oklahoma State because you're in a conference where all you got to do is build the program back up a little bit. You don't need tons of NIL money. You build it back up and look who you play every week. You're not sitting there trying to beat SEC teams. Arkansas schedule, one of the things that's going to be so hard for Petrino is who they're playing.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, they look good against Tennessee, improved a lot. Guess what? A&M's better than Tennessee. They're almost as good as Tennessee offensively, and they're a lot better defensively. So that's tough. Okay, Texas looked vulnerable there for a while. Now they suddenly look like world beaters again. Okay, LSU, I don't know. They're kind of up and down. You don't know. Can you win that? What about Mississippi State? At one time, they were surprising everybody. Now they may be a little bit more vulnerable. But when you look at the remaining 6 games, you're just like, which of these games do you win? And when you talk about Petrino, when he came in here in 2007, he was there when Reggie Herring was running this team. Houston Nutt had taken 3 or 4 of his coaches to go recruit at Ole Miss, and I remember being in that indoor workout area and watching them work out. You could look up and through those glass windows in the weight room, and you could see Petrino standing there watching everything they were doing. In this November, December of that year, he was already familiar with the players here. Then he got to go through the off-season program. Then he got to go through summer workouts, summer conditioning, and then fall camp. And by the time they started to play, he knew this team, and they went 5-7. Okay, now compare to what happens this year. He didn't get to do any of that stuff as the head coach. All of a sudden, almost halfway through the season, he just inherits this team. He has to figure out what to do, and he's done a good job so far. But it is so much more difficult what he's trying to do right now than what he did before. Not to include the fact that before he knew no matter what happened that first year, he wasn't going to be gone. Now he knows if he doesn't do enough, he's not getting the job. But when I look at him, and I knew him real well when he was here the first time, and people try to tell me I'm wrong about that. I don't care. They're wrong. He's different. He's different. He's just got a different mentality. At press conferences, he's smiling. He's agreeable. I watched him on the sidelines. He didn't blow up at anybody. He wasn't mad trying to rip into referees or anything like that. He wasn't screaming at players. There's been no report of him jumping all over players in practice. He's a lot more reasonable than he used to be. And I was worried that would mean he's different in his coaching style and it won't work. But so far it has worked. And people have said, well, wait a minute, the offense went downhill. No, it didn't. They basically scored in 3 of the 4 quarters and outscored Tennessee in the fourth quarter and were never trailed in the first half offensively. So they were doing the things they needed to do. It was just that bad third quarter. And he came on and owned it and said, hey, I was stuck on the running game. I kept going to it. I should have switched over and started throwing those short passes over the middle, which ended up working. That's on me. So when a coach, I mean, the big complaint about Pittman was he didn't seem to have an answer when people would say, "What happened?" He was just, "Well, I'm
Yeah.
not sure." Petrino has an answer, and he's not mad. He's smiling and he's saying, "Here's where I screwed up." So I like his demeanor. I think they want to give him this job. It's the simplest thing to do if you do
Hmm.
this, but he's got to win two, maybe three games, and that's going to be tough.
So you do think he has to win two or three to
I'm
get the
not.
job?
I'm not sure what the number is because I'm not sitting there. I will just say that I have talked to one board member, one, and that
Uh-huh.
board member acted like to me he didn't know what the hell was going on. I mean, I don't know if he was telling me the truth, but I did get the impression that the board and these boosters, they're not all on the same page. Some of them don't
Hmm.
even know what the others are thinking right now because they can't answer certain questions. And
Hmm.
I've got other sources that know board members, and they say, no, it's a typical, they're not unified right now. At some point, like I said, they're going to have to come together, but right now they're not.
Yeah, that's not good. And you almost wonder too if they're not unified and you need to make a decision quick, that can be a problem as well, right? Because sometimes these things come down to crunch time and decisions have got to be made quickly. And if you're not unified, you could end up missing out on everybody you want.
I do think when it gets down to the point where you really have to do something, they will probably somebody will step in and say, "Let's don't be stupid here. We're gonna hurt ourselves." So I think what's going on right now is normal because you don't have to have the decision made yet.
Hmm.
But as we get closer to the end of the year, it's going to be interesting to see how this thing shifts. And if you're hearing different things, and you got to keep your ear to the ground. You're not always right. I mean, I sat through that whole John L. Smith year, and that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Jeff Long kept that quiet. We knew he was just hired for 6, 8 months for 850,000. He was going to be gone, so we
Hmm.
knew he was out of the picture. We didn't hear one clue. I don't think Jeff Long even talked to. I don't think Jeff Long even talked to his wife because nobody knew. And we
Yeah.
got to the end where the Heisman thing is announced, and that's when these coaches are usually hired. So we knew it was going to happen, and it was on a Sunday. Everybody, I'm telling you, everybody was at work that day. And one of the Little Rock stations reported that it was Mike Gundy. And they called me in, put me on the air and says, "Is it Gundy?" And I said, "I don't think so. I would know if it was." And so I
Hmm.
said, "No." But I didn't know who it was. I had a good friend who worked for the Stevens Incorporated. He called me up because he saw that and he said, "Mike, Stevens Plain is at Teterboro. That's in New Jersey, across from the Hudson River, across from New York. That's where you
Hmm.
go when you don't want to be noticed." He
Yep.
said, "Watch where that plane goes this afternoon. Where it goes will tell you who the next head coach would be." Well, we started tracking it, and it headed to Madison, Brett Bielema. And that's how long that took. It took until the last day, the day that he was hired, before I had a clue as to who it would be. And even when I saw that it was headed to Madison, I was going, Brett Bielema is coming here. He's just won 3 Big Ten titles in the Rose Bowl. What are you talking about? This makes no sense. But that's what happened.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you mentioned that banquet. I mean, that is kind of the informal final piece of a lot of coaching searches because people can get out of town and now that it's harder to
That's right.
track planes. I mean, it's kind of where all the deals go down. So I imagine
Exactly.
Teterboro Airport's going to be real busy this
Well,
year.
I mean, you go back to when Danny Ford was hired, and John
Hmm.
White came up with this genius idea of letting former players pick the coach. And Frank just looked at that kind of like, "Okay, do your thing over here, John White. I'm going to do my thing."
Hmm.
And he took Jim Lindsey, and he wanted Tom Tuberville at Ole Miss because of what he'd done, and he was from Arkansas. They go up to New York. They go into his room. They get a verbal agreement from him. "Yeah, I'll come here for this amount of money." They come back, everything's okay, and then Tuberville made a mistake because he did want this job, but he called Frank back up and said, "Look, Ole Miss has offered me more money." And Frank said, "Good, bye." And
Yeah.
Tuberville sat on that for a while and then called him back and said, "Hey, I'll come under the original agreement." And Frank said sorry because he had already gone in and talked to the John White committee, the players who they wanted Houston Nutt. They had interviewed 4 or 5 candidates, and they thought Houston because what is Houston? He gets in, hey, and he had them all fired up.
Oh yeah,
And so he said, okay, you can hire him, and that's how he ended up here instead of
yeah.
Tom Tuberville.
It's amazing how things can swerve at the end, especially how much of a role is Jimmy Sexton going to play in this? Because it seems like he controls 90% of the coaches.
Well, I don't think in the end, if I'm looking at this right, I don't think he controls Mullen. Mullen
Hmm.
wants to come here, and I don't think he's got a lot of conditions, and I don't think he controls Petrino because
Yeah,
Petrino's agent came in during that press conference when it was all announced that Pittman was gone, and I saw that guy, and he's not Jimmy Sexton.
yeah,
So I don't think we're going to have that. But you never know; it could happen. I mean, somebody could pop into this search and maybe they're dealing with Sexton again. That's what honestly got Pittman in trouble. When he came in here on that press conference, and everybody knew he'd never been a head coach before, but he'd been here as an assistant. He just got up there and cried. So this is the best job in America. And he cries in front of all those people. They're like, "Oh, he wants to be here." And then he talked about his agent was just his local attorney, a lady that he knew. And then he has that COVID year, and then wins 9 games, beats James Franklin and Penn State in a bowl game, and he's rolling, right? And then right
hmm,
after that bowl game, we wake up to the news that he's got Jimmy Sexton as his agent, and Hunter Yurichek's giving him this big buyout, this big new
yeah,
contract, and the fans went, "What is this all about?" And he was still rolling into the next year. 4 wins to start the season. They're playing A&M. They're up 14-0 in the second quarter and at the 1 yard line and about to go up 21-0 for a 5-0 start. And KJ Jefferson tries to pole vault over
yeah,
the pile and ends up fumbling and it gets run back and they lose that game and they ended up winning just 7 games. And they already won 4 at that point. So, things can turn in a hurry. But that's where it went bad for Pittman. And I
yeah,
continued to believe that I thought he would get the job done, but it did what he had a. There are coaches that are snake bit, and I think Pittman's was in some cases. He just things kept happening that and somebody was frustrated by these fumbles, and the fumbles are your own fault. But he was basically saying to us, when do we do one of these gifts? We're always giving people gifts. When's somebody going to give us a gift? And I'm scratching my head going, it's got to happen sooner or later.
yeah.
And sometimes you can hire a coach and he's just got a karma about him and good things happen to him. I promise you, when you look at some of the best coaches in the history of the game, they've had some good luck along the way.
Oh, no question about it. And speaking about Pittman and Sexton, in John Talty and Armin Katayan's book, The Price, there's a chapter about Jimmy Sexton, and he came hard after Pittman because he wants to represent every coach in the
That's
SEC, and
right.
it would be hard to turn down a guy like that. So
Well, when he
when he comes
promises
at
you
you,
all that money, but then he
yeah,
makes the money too. So
yeah. Uh,
exactly.
Real quickly before we wrap up, as our time's about to wind down, it seems like Arkansas runs into trouble every time they give a coach an extension. Why do you think that is?
There's no way around it, and I'm not sure why. I don't think you can avoid an extension if he's doing okay. But you got to be careful when you extend somebody. Has anybody ever thought about an AD just saying no? What would Sam Pittman have said if he'd said no to that contract, no to an extension?
Yeah.
He might have just said, okay. Where else is he going for the last 2 or 3 years? What if what if they just said, no, we're not giving you this buyout, we're not giving you this extension? What are you going to do then? Where's he going to go? I don't think he goes anywhere. So maybe that's part of the problem. ADs that don't have enough guts to say, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, somebody's going to have to take a stand at some point, especially with all these crazy salaries going on. I mean, good Lord, we're talking $50 million buyouts and $40 million buyouts. Yeah, I mean, the fans have said no. Who's going to be the first AD to say no?
Absolutely. So we'll see, but somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, Mike, we're out of time. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.